There is a moment before thought, before the word that names it, before the story that explains it, before the trial that decides what is real. There is space. You've been there countless times. The exact moment after waking up, when the world still had no name. In the silence between two breaths, in the second after a song ends, and the air still carries the echo. In this space, something is watching. Not one thought observing another thought, not an opinion evaluating reality. Something quieter than that, something earlier. This video is not an explanation. It's an invitation for you to remember something you already know, but who rarely has the quietude to feel. Sit down, breathe, let time slow down. There is something that most of us know intimately, but rarely name. The feeling of being present and at the same time distant. To look at your own life as if it belonged to someone you almost know. You live each day. You perform the rituals. You reply to messages. You smile at the right times. But somewhere, quietly, there's a question that just won't go away. Is that me? Is this real? Why does it seem like I'm watching everything from a distance? This feeling is not a problem to be solved. It's a sign. It is consciousness trying to recognize itself through the noise. Because for a long time, for most of us, identity was constructed from the outside in. Someone told you who you were. The world has shown you what you should want. And you learned to search outside for what can only be found within. Not because you made a mistake, but because no one ever showed you that there was another way. The observer's direction. Think about how many times you've tried to change reality superficially, changing jobs, cities, relationships, routines. And for a while it seemed to work. The landscape was changing. The pain was lessening. But then she would come back, slightly different, with a different name, but the same texture. It's as if the scenery changes, but the script remains the same. This is not your fault. It's simply what happens when we try to rearrange the exterior without realizing that the source of experience lies within and not just inside she and the interior. It's what you're seeing right now. There is a difference between observing a thought and to be thought. Try it now. Notice that a thought is arising as you listen to this. Perhaps it's a judgment. Perhaps it's a memory that has been triggered. Perhaps it's the inner voice saying yes or no. But also note, there is something that is noticing this thought. Who's noticing? Don't respond with another word. Just feel the space for the question. That's what you're noticing. This pure field of perception. This is what we call consciousness here, and it has a peculiar quality. She cannot be observed because she is the one who observes. She cannot be found because she is the very act of searching. She cannot be reached because she was already here before you started looking. For years, science has tried to find consciousness in the brain. Philosophers have tried to define it with words. Religions have tried to name it with something sacred. And each attempt resembled an eye trying to see itself without a mirror, because consciousness is not an object that exists within the universe. She is that within which the universe exists. Think about it slowly. You don't experience the world directly. You experience your perception of the world. Each color you see is interpreted by your nervous system. Each sound is translated into frequency and meaning. Each emotion is a response from an internal field to an external stimulus. What you call objective reality has already passed through you before it became experience. And who decides what gets in? Who filters it? Who interprets it? Consciousness, the observer, you. There is an age-old question that philosophy and science have yet to answer. Which comes first, reality or the consciousness that perceives it? Most people have assumed, without question, that the world exists out there, solid, independent, complete, and that consciousness is merely a belated observer, a passenger on the train of matter. But what if it's the other way around? What if consciousness is not within reality, but reality is within consciousness? Not as a fantasy, not as an illusion, but as a fundamental structure of how existence works. In quantum physics, there is a phenomenon that has challenged all previous models. A particle, when not being observed, exists in multiple states at the same time, a field of possibilities, a space of pure potential. But at the moment it is observed, the moment consciousness touches that potential, it collapses into a specific reality. One among all the possibilities. The physicist doesn't know yet, because this happens, but the fact is documented, repeated, verified. The act of observing changes what is observed. Now take this beyond the laboratory. Apply this to your life, for the way you see yourself, for what you expect to find when you wake up in the morning, for the quality of attention you bring to your relationships. If the observer changes what is observed, so the quality of your conscience, it is actively shaping the texture of its reality, not metaphorically, not as self-help, as a structure, as a phenomenon. Think about what this means. If you carry within you an observer who always expects the same thing, that anticipates disappointment, that confirms scarcity, that validates fear, so what does he find wherever he looks? These are the particles that collapsed according to that expectation. Not because the world is against you, but that's because the observer within you hasn't yet recognized themselves as a creator. And here lies a paradox that is worth experiencing slowly. The consciousness that perceives this now, who can hear that phrase and feel something stir inside? It's a different level of awareness than it was before, simply by the act of perceiving. You didn't have to do anything. No technique, no effort, no dramatic transformation, simply the act of seeing clearly. That's already the change. There's a tradition that says the universe isn't something that just happens to you. It's something that happens through you, that each conscious being is a kind of window through which existence views itself, a unique, unrepeatable, and essential perspective. And when that window is clouded by conditioning, by inherited fears, by stories that were never your own, whatever passes through it becomes distorted, not because the light changed, but that's because the glass bears old marks. Cleaning glass isn't a strenuous effort. It's not about scraping hard. It's simply noticing that there are marks, and in that realization, clarity begins to emerge. Because consciousness has an extraordinary property. One cannot remain unaware of oneself after one has recognized oneself. It's an irreversible process, slow, often silent, but irreversible, like light filtering through a crack in a dark room. You can close your eyes, but the light has already come in. It's already there. And some part of you already knows that. Let's talk about identity. Most of us carry a story about who we are, a narrative constructed over years, made up of selected memories, of the roles we assume, of the expectations we internalize. I'm someone who doesn't have much luck. I'm someone that people eventually abandon. I am someone who is never enough. I'm someone who needs approval to feel real. These stories have a texture. They have weight. They have a voice. But there's something these stories never manage to capture. What is watching them? The story about you is not about you. It's a narrative being created within you. Just as thoughts about the ocean are not the ocean, you are the space within which these stories emerge, the silence within which words have meaning, the formless presence within which all forms appear. And this space, this presence, it wasn't built upon his experiences. She was there before them. She'll be there later. She is what you become when you stop being what you've learned to be. Now comes the trickiest part. If consciousness is the cause, if the quality of your observation shapes the texture of what appears, so a question naturally arises. What happens when this awareness begins to manifest itself clearly, not with judgment, not in a hurry to change, but with the stillness of someone who finally stops running? And just look, something is starting to reorganize itself, not dramatically, not overnight, but like a river, finding its natural course after years of being diverted. The situations in your life, relationships, work, recurring patterns, they begin to reveal a different kind of coherence, not because the world changed first, but because the field of perception that generated them has changed. And when the field changes, what it creates also changes. Not tomorrow, not after sufficient effort. The change is already happening. At the exact moment when consciousness recognizes itself as such, the change has already happened. I want to ask you a question, not so that you answer out loud, so that you carry it inside like a stone in your pocket. Present, no urgency. If you knew that your consciousness has power over your reality, not as magic, but as structure, what type of observer would you choose to be? Consider the observer who expects defeat, those who see a threat before they see a possibility, who interprets silence as rejection and delay as failure. This observer is not weak. He's not stupid. He was probably very intelligent at some point in his life. He quickly learned to detect danger in order to protect himself. But perhaps this observer is applying old solutions to problems that no longer exist, using a map of a territory you've already left behind. And here's what's profound. You don't need to fight against this ancient observer. There's no need to delete it. You just need to realize that there is an observer, server, a larger space that contains both. And this larger space, this broader awareness, he was never afraid. She was never injured. It never needed approval. She simply is. When you touch that space, even for a second, even for a fleeting instant, something in your entire system recognizes it. How to get back home after a long time, not the home of a specific childhood, the house that came before all houses, the home that predates the birth of any story. And from the perspective of that home, things that seemed impossible are starting to seem simply not yet accomplished. People who once seemed like threats are starting to look like just people carrying their own stories. Problems that once seemed like part of an identity begin to resemble situations, fleeting, malleable, and dynamic, not because you became naive, but because you became more real. There is a huge difference between wanting reality to be different and to know that you are the field within which it is organized. The first position is impotence disguised as hope. The second is responsibility without guilt. Not the responsibility of, I was wrong, I failed, I should have done things differently. The responsibility of, I am the observer, and as I observe, I shape what is observed. And I can observe from another place. This is not simple. It doesn't happen all at once. And it has nothing to do with positive or negative, with optimism or willpower. It has to do with the quality of the presence. Learning to inhabit the present moment with less noise. Because in the present moment, reality is still potential. The present moment is still open. It is the only moment where consciousness can act as a cause, not in the past, which has already collapsed in form, not in the future, which doesn't yet exist as an experiment, only here, only now, and perhaps that is the quietest truth there is. The now. It is not a moment between the past and the future. It's the only place where you truly exist. It is the only place where consciousness is alive and active. It's the only place where change is possible. Everything else is memory or anticipation. Both are constructs of the mind. Both real as experience, but not real as a presence. Only the present moment is real as presence. And here you are. Now, that, in itself, is enough to get everything moving. You've made it this far, not just at this point in the video. You've made it this far, to this moment of awareness, to this instant of perception, through a lifetime of experiences that have brought you exactly to this moment. Nothing was wasted, not even the losses, not even the deviations, not even the years you spent looking in the wrong place. It was all part of an observer's journey to finding their own perspective. And now you are here with a slightly different understanding than the one presented in this video. Perhaps not dramatically, perhaps just a crack that's more open, a slightly deeper breath, a slightly shorter distance between you and what you are observing. This is real. That's enough. This is change happening. You don't need to understand everything right now. You don't have to believe in anything. All you need to do is remain willing to observe. With a little more quiet, a little more curiosity, I'm a little less certain that I already know who it is. Because what you are, it's much bigger than any story about you. The awareness that is passing through you now, it's the same one that goes through everything. The same one that is behind the movement of the leaves. The same one that dwells in the silence between two notes. The same one that was there before you learned your name. She wasn't born when you were born. It won't end when you end. She's using you as a window. And this window, this unique perspective, this specific way of looking, this awareness that only exists in you in this way, it's the rarest gift there is. There is a change that doesn't require permission, that needs no explanation, that doesn't require the world to move first. The change begins with the observer, the moment he stops wondering what reality will do, and he begins to notice what he himself is creating, not with effort, with presence, not forcefully, clearly. The change has already happened, not because something outside has reorganized itself, but because something inside, he recognized himself, and the observer who recognizes himself as an observer. It's never quite the same again. You may not perceive this as something dramatic right now. It may just seem like a video you watched, an afternoon that passed, a reflection that came and went. But something was planted, something that doesn't require your effort to grow. All you need is moments like this, of stillness, of observation, of a consciousness that allows itself to rest within. Keep watching, not what the world does. What do you do with what the world offers? That's not what happens. What are you seeing? What's happening? Because between the event and its response, there is space. And in that space, your freedom lies within you. It's your creation. Your conscience is acting as the cause, the now self. Not a self that will ever exist. Not a self that existed before. The self that exists only now. The only self that has always been real. The only self that can create.